Liban. Liban the man. Okay, Bismillah, we'll get started in 1 minute, okay? So get in a position you're comfortable in. Get your phones turned to the appropriate setting to be ready to listen. 30 seconds, we'll get started. 15 seconds. Let time sit still and it goes by a lot slower than you realize. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you. Let's do it one more time with a little more enthusiasm. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, thank you very much. So first things first, while we're here to learn, I appreciate everyone being here. I'm very happy to be here. Gatherings in the masjid are a wonderful thing, and I'm happy to be a part of it in any way. I really appreciate everyone coming here to listen. Those of you who were not here last week, just keep that in mind because I'm going to ask you something in a moment. And those of you who were here last week, just keep that in mind because I'm also going to ask you something in a moment. While I'm speaking, those of you who were not here last week, okay, I'm a teacher. I've been a public school teacher for 15 years. I also work training teachers on how to teach, as well as teaching them about Muslim communities, Muslim kids, and about Islam. Something you're trained to do as a teacher, when you're talking, if someone talks while you're talking, or actually even someone just turns to talk to someone else, what you're trained to do is to stop talking. You just cut yourself off. So I've been doing that for 15 years whenever I'm talking in front of people. So I'm completely conditioned to do that. That's not how everyone who speaks in the masjid does it. I'll see it a lot of times, especially in gatherings where there's young people. Someone will be talking in the masjid, the young people will start talking to one another, and the person talking will just keep going. Okay, I don't do that. I literally cannot do that because I'm so used. When you teach 6 hours a day, 180 days a year. So doing that for 15 years, it's such a habit for me that if I'm talking and someone else starts talking even at a whisper, or they turn talk, I just cut myself off and everything stops. And then we have to stop and wait for you to stop talking. So please just keep that in mind. You're here to benefit. Do be listening. And if you hear me stop and you realize that you turned to say something, I understand a lot of times something gets in your mind. You want to say something to your friend, someone next to you. Doesn't mean anyone's upset at you or anything like that. But that is just what I have to do while I'm talking. And it will help everyone pay better attention as well, and everyone will get more benefit out of it as well. A lot of times young people don't realize, too, how much your whispering and your side talking is actually a distraction to people. People hear you better than you think they do. Just because they're not saying something, just because they're not reacting to you, doesn't mean they don't hear you. They do hear you. So be listening. We will have a break. I don't know if we'll go as long today as we did 2 weeks. We will have a break. You'll have a chance to talk then. And of course, there will be the opportunity to ask questions and all that type of thing. Okay? Raise your hand. Doesn't have to be way high, but do show me if you were here last time, which was 2 weeks ago. Put your hand in the air. Okay? Okay, very good. Very good. Those of you who were here, just be thinking about something that was a main takeaway. Meaning one of the most important things that was learned last week. Okay, be thinking about that. Don't say it right now, just be thinking about it. Raise your hand if you're under 18 and you were not here 2 weeks ago. Raise your hand, okay? Okay, so there's more people who were not here than were here. Okay, good. Now, one of you keep your hands up, keep your hands up, keep your hands up. One of you who doesn't have your hand up right now, turn to someone who does, or a group of them who does, and tell them one thing that we learned about last week. Okay, just tell them one thing. Okay? You guys can put your hands down. Okay, one thing, Jazakallah khair. Okay to take a moment to think about it too. Well, I'll go back over it, but take a moment to think. Okay, this is about you taking a moment to think about it. That's what it's about, all right? Excuse me. Take about 45 more seconds to talk to them and then start turning back to listen. $30. 15 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, turn back, facing me. Turn back, facing me. Sit settled, facing me. My guy over here, you, because I talked to you last week. Yes. So I want you to just share what you told the young guy you're sitting next to. I'm talking to him behind you, sorry. No problem. Yep. Good. Okay. So there's three things. First of all, because there's so many of you who are new this week, raise your hand if you go to school in Wayzata public schools. Okay. Okay, good. Those of you who are new this week. Okay, put your hand down. Raise your hand if you go to Wayzata High School. Okay. Raise your hand if you go to one of the middle schools in Wayzata. Okay, good. A lot of middle school. Put your hands down. Raise your hand if you do not go to Wayzata public schools, you go to different school districts. Okay, good. Mostly Wayzata. All right. So those of you who were not here last week, listen very carefully, and even those of you who were, because it's beneficial to review and learning. My name is Michael. My last name is Abraham. Okay, as I was saying before, I've been a teacher for 15 years in public schools. I also wrote a book for non-Muslim teachers about teaching Muslim kids. So I also teach teachers, both about how to teach, how to manage kids, as well as about Islam and Muslims. Parents asked me to do this session because many of your parents, they find it difficult to help Muslim kids maintain being Muslim when they're in school. The public school environment of America is a challenging place to be in it and to be confident about being Muslim, and certainly to act out Islam. And most of you, those of you who were not here last week, raise your hand if your parents were born in a different country, please. Raise your hand if your parents were born in a different country. Okay, good. Good. Most of you. Okay. So we talked a lot about this. You can put your hands down. Now, when I was growing up in the 1990s, here in Minnesota, I would say the idea of there being a Muslim community in Minnesota isn't really an idea that most people in Minnesota had. Like, they wouldn't have even known that was a thing, because it was so little of a thing. Most of you, your parents probably came sometime after the year 2000. So raising kids here for your parents, it's something very, very new to them, and usually very different from how it was done back home or what their experience was back home. What I talked about last week was two things. One, some of the ways that you end up being different when you're raised here in America versus back home. In most Muslim countries, everyone has more responsibility to something other than themselves. Okay, what I mean, they have a responsibility to the family. They have a responsibility to the whole community. And in Muslim countries, that's very closely connected to the fact that you have responsibilities in your religion as well. And ultimately, you have responsibilities to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for your parents or your grandparents, when they grew up in a different country, everyone told them about this. Everyone told them about this, and it was something that was reinforced on them all the time. Here, you might get told that at home. You might get told that in the masjid. But what American kids experience is most places that you exist in the society, and certainly at school, that's not really what everyone is talking about. That's not really what everyone is thinking about. And for young people especially, what most people are thinking about is being entertained and having fun. That is what most people are thinking about. And most young people, when they go through their lives in this country, they go through school, they come here, they go home, no matter where they are. What they are usually thinking about is this boring or is this fun? And that type of window kind of runs their life. Now, because young people think that way, and it's easy to know, and it's studied by people who study the human mind, psychologists, and it's studied by people in big companies that want your attention. Because everyone knows this, anyone who wants to make a whole lot of money in the society, they go about trying to get the attention of young people, especially teenagers. Why? Because it's easy to do, because all they want is fun things put in front of them. And it's not haram to have fun. Some types of fun, it is haram. But when your life is too obsessed with fun, and it's too much about fun, you're really setting yourself up for a bad time down the road. Because the way that your mind will change, and part of what I talked about last week, is the human mind, literally the chemicals and the matter that your brain is made up of. It will change more from age 12 to 25 than it changes at any time in your life. Even more from a baby to age 12, even though a baby's mind changes a lot during that time. And by the time you get older, your mind will not experience fun the same way. It won't even have the same concept of fun. It almost won't even think about fun. It'll be thinking more about responsibility. It'll be thinking more about accomplishments. And it will be thinking a lot more about other people. Because as you get older, you get more aware of other people. And you get more responsibility towards other people. And the people who had too much fun when they were young, they're not in a position to help other people when they get older. But the people who didn't always try to have so much fun, even though it was tempted all around them, those are the people who can help others when they get older. And most of your life will not be spent being young, inshallah. The average age that someone lives to in this country is about 79, 78. Many people live longer. So most of your life is not spent as a kid. Most of your life is not spent as a teenager. But it's choices that you make when you are younger that set up your ability to be successful when you're older. And everyone is trying to take advantage of your minds, especially the people in the music industry. who decide what music gets played and what videos are everywhere that becomes very popular that all the young people are talking about. It's intentional that all that stuff is made to be some of the stupidest stuff you can imagine. Same with TV shows. Same with movies. Certainly with whatever goes viral on social media. Behind all of that is people making billions of dollars who are making money off of your own or teenagers' addiction to all that entertainment and trying to lock you into a life of that. So one of the big lessons of the last session, was don't be a fool. And don't let other people take you for a fool. Most of the kids you will see around you will be fools like that. They'll be taken advantage of like that, especially by the social media industries. You only do something better for yourself if you're smarter than that. So be smarter than that. That was the first thing. Don't be a fool. That was the first lesson last week. The second thing that I talked about last week, and something that's a really big difference between you and your parents. You guys who are under 18, just raise your hand. Do you want to be Muslim? Most of your life, just raise your hand. Do you want to be Muslim? You want to be Muslim? Okay, good. I'm glad you feel that way. Many of you will have a hard time. Many of you will have a hard time maintaining that or feeling good about being a Muslim if you don't develop a strong idea of why you are a Muslim in this country. And I want you to just think about that question right now. Those of you who were not here last week, even those of you who were if you don't remember, think about that. You're a Muslim. They say there's about 1%, I think it's a little more now, but about 1%, only 1 out of 100 people in the United States are Muslim. What does it mean for you to be Muslim and living in this country? Just think about it for a moment. What does it mean for you to be Muslim in this country? I'm going to tell you what it means, because not everyone has a clear idea of it. Now, it might not be the same thing as what it meant for your parents, especially if your parents are born in a different country. Most people who immigrated to this country from Muslim countries they did it for economic reasons. What does it mean to do it for economic reasons? It means they did it for money. They did it for money. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some people had no choice. Certainly if they went through the refugee experience, they had no choice. And actually, even if it was not that way, the way that money works worldwide is this country has control over it. So it just ends up being that anywhere you are in the world, if you want to help people out to a certain degree, you have to come here eventually. Because this country controls how money works worldwide. So most people who came from Muslim countries, they came here for money. So they had to be concerned about that when they came here. And they had to be concerned about just creating a community in the first place. They had to be concerned about creating the masjid. They had to be concerned about getting their kids in schools. They had to be concerned about having jobs and keeping jobs. So most of your parents, they're more concerned about like basic survival than they were about teaching people here about Islam or what it meant to be Muslim. And even if they wanted to do that, it would have been difficult for them. Why? Why would it have been difficult for your parents to teach people about Islam here and teach people about what it means to be Muslim. Why would that be difficult for them? Just think about it for a moment. I'll give you my reasons, and you can see if your own reasons match with what you have in your head. There's a few reasons why it'd be difficult for them. Some of them are small. For example, a lot of your parents probably, when they speak with something of an accent. Just something like that is something that is very difficult to live with. Just something like that makes it difficult when you go into a job interview, or when you start doing a job and you have to perform the duties of it in a certain way. You have to interact with different people and customers. And you have to constantly carry around this worry about, how do I sound to this person? Because the way I speak English doesn't sound the same as them. Just that is something that is very difficult for people to go through. And certainly it makes them difficult to think about teaching people about something. And certainly makes it difficult to just think about teaching people about something as serious as Islam. The other reason is, raise your hand if you know what 9/11 is. You've heard of 9/11 before, okay? Okay, good. Put your hands down. So you guys are unique because you were born after that. So you don't know what it was like back then. But, if you're not aware, from basically 2001, really up till 20 years ago, but certainly from the years 2001 to 2010, the United States was at war in Muslim countries. And Muslims were constantly being made to be bad people in the media, on the news. And you didn't have social media that Muslims could just get on and try to educate people about differently back then, or anything like that. So there was a lot of reasons why it's difficult for your parents to even think about educating people about Islam. But for you guys who are growing up here, these types of insecurities, these types of fears that your parents had, you don't have that. And you don't have to have that. And there's no reason you should have that. You feel comfortable in American culture. You live here and you feel like it's your home. You speak the language and no one thinks it's funny the way that you speak it. It's really sad the limited amount that Muslim kids in America can become educated in Islam. You owe it to yourselves to make a commitment that at least one day you're going to put effort into that. If you looked into Islam deeply, you'd find many Islamic scholars, most of them actually, in general, they say that Muslims shouldn't live in non-Muslim countries unless they're giving dawah. Meaning unless they're calling people to Islam. Or unless they're educating people about Islam. And you guys, in school, I'm not saying that you're going to go to school in September and start doing this right away. But going back to that question of what it means to be Muslim in this country. As I said, when I grew up in the 1990s, people didn't even think about Muslims being in Minnesota. Most people. It wasn't even something they thought about because there weren't many here. So you guys are unique. You're special in all of history. Because there has never been a generation of Muslim young people growing up in America like there is now in such large numbers. And you might have some familiarity that this country and its government, the people in the government that the people vote for, in a lot of places in the Muslim world, they've made things difficult for people, such as what is going on in Palestine right now. This isn't the first time it's maybe not happened so badly, but it's not the first time something like that has happened. If you look back in the conflicts in East Africa, you'll find it rooted in things that the United States and Britain did after World War II. Same thing in Iraq. Same thing in most of the Muslim countries. Many people who suffered through those types of things, they would have liked the chance to teach people in this country about Islam. They would have liked that, but they didn't have that chance. You guys have that chance. And you need to get it in your minds right now that this is an important part of your life, an important part of you being Muslim in America. Because otherwise, you're just going to experience Islam. Well, I shouldn't say that, but in a large way, especially while you're young, you'll just experience Islam as being a bunch of rules. Being something that's telling you you can't do this and you can't do that and you have to do this and you have to do that. And if it's not attached to this bigger purpose that you have and this position that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put you in, that no one else in history was put in before, if it's not attached to that, you'll have a hard time really sticking to what Islam obliges to you. Raise your hand if you know how to recite the Quran. Raise your hand if you've learned how to recite the Quran. Good, mashallah. Can you guys put those away, please? Please put them away. Thank you. Put your hands down, good. Okay, raise your hand if you can understand the Quran when you read it. Okay, good. A lot less of you. Raise your hand if you've read like a translation of it or parts of it. Okay, good. Put your hands down. Now, answer me verbally. Okay, the Anbiya, or the prophets that the Quran speaks about, peace be upon all of them. In those stories and in their lives, were they in lands of believers or were they in lands of disbelievers? They were in lands of disbelievers. So while your parents grew up in places full of Muslims, and your grandparents and your great-grandparents and them and all of them before, none of them had the chance to live the lives of the prophets, peace be upon them, like that. Because they didn't find themselves in lands of disbelievers. But here you are in your life, and you find yourself in a land of disbelievers. So you have the chance. What that Quran speaks about, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Muslims about, and the life and mission He tells them to have, you have the chance to live it out for real in your life. And others, they didn't have a chance before that. That is something that you should realize now is something very, very special. And it's something you should realize is a very long-term commitment to make. Because if you look at the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, not only was he a prophet for 23 years after he first received revelation, but even he had 40 years of life before that put him in position to call people to Islam. And that is the thing you need to be thinking about in life. How are you positioning yourself with people? Both the non-Muslims and the Muslims who are struggling, or they can't control themselves, and they're doing everything they're not supposed to. How do you start positioning them? How do you start positioning yourself with them to be able to call them to Islam? Okay? Now I'm going to talk about that in a moment, because that summarizes what we said last week. And then I'll get into the next topic that we're going to talk about. What I want you guys to do, we're not going to have like the bigger break now. I don't know if we're going to have a bigger break like last time, but I just want you guys for, let's say, 3 minutes, just stand up. You can talk, you can move your legs a little bit, and just take a little break like that. Okay, go ahead, stand up, give your legs a break. Okay, talk a little bit. Okay. 3 minutes, and not more. Two minutes. One minute. Yeah, it would be nice. Yeah, thanks. "30 seconds. No, it's fine. I mean, the light's better for the camera, you know? So it's fine, yeah. I might need one more later. 15 seconds. Huh? Thanks, appreciate that. Inshallah. 10 seconds. 5, 4, please sit down. 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay. Ray, thank you. Raise, if you're not facing me, please turn towards me so you're looking up here. Thank you. Raise your hand. Raise your hand again if you were not here last week. Okay, there's a few more of you. You know, something I did last week, I had every person under 18 tell me their name and where their parents were born. I was thinking I wasn't going to do that this week because it takes some time. And maybe there was going to be more people who were here last week, but I kind of want to do that because I want to feel like I know you guys a little bit. Okay? So we're going to raise your hand. Sorry if you were not here last week. Okay, we're going to start from the right, go to the left. Just tell me your name and where your parents are born. Go ahead. Hold on. Sorry, can we quiet down a little bit maybe? I know there's little kids in the back and everything. I'm not sure if they can go out into where the shoes are or something. And sisters, if you can quiet down a little bit, please. Thank you. If you're whispering to someone, please finish it up. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, sorry. Name, where your parents were born. Thanks. Okay. Mashallah. Okay. Mashallah. No, we skipped you. You were here last week. Okay. Okay. You, my guy in the front here. Okay? 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 I think you were here last week. Okay, go ahead. Okay. Sure. Michelle. Yeah. This guy back here. Did you go? Go ahead. Okay. This guy. Okay, mashallah. I'm not going to go all the way back, okay? And we're going to spare the sisters this time because there's so many people, okay? If we can keep our voices down, please, all right? Because the kids, they will struggle to absorb the message if we're talking, okay? So, guys, last time there was two questions that is asked the most. One was, if you're a Muslim, you're young and in school, and I got into last time kind of the culture of the kids, the culture of teenagers, and especially the culture of Muslim teenagers that we have here in Minnesota, which is really not going too well in a lot of ways, or there's at least a lot of negativity in it, and there's a lot of tension on negative aspects of it. I was asked, how do you separate from friends? Or how do you separate from groups of kids who you are involved in when you're in school and this type of thing? I'm going to get to that. Okay? The other question I was asked, I was asked the most actually? I was asked why I became Muslim. Because I'm Arab, but I'm not from a Muslim family. My father's an Arab Christian. And there's many reasons why someone becomes Muslim. I'm not going to get too into it, but most of it has to do with Islam having the truth. But something about Islam, when you learn about it and you see it as a non-Muslim, there is nothing in this world that bonds people together, especially people of different races and ethnic backgrounds, like Islam does. There really is nothing like that. And every gathering that the Muslims get together is almost a celebration of that. And the different places that all you guys and all your families are from is a reminder of that. If you think about the problems of racism in this country and the issues of racial harmony, they'll never solve that without Islam. Like many other problems that the society has. And you'll learn about those problems in school. So you know about those problems. You know the history of those problems in this country better than your parents do, a lot of you. If you're not thinking that you're going to give Islam to people or offer it to them, you're being selfish. You're being selfish. And you're making your family selfish. Because the family came here for money. And your parents are working jobs, they're making money. You'll probably work a job and make money. You're going to school, getting an education. So we're taking from the society. Yes, we're contributing when we do our jobs and everything, but as Muslims, what do we have to contribute the most? Islam is what we have to contribute the most, and people need it. And whether or not people accept it, that's up to them. It's up to them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it at least needs to be offered to them. And that's what you need to think about. Now, how do you start positioning yourself to give dawah to people? Because it's not something you can just do like that. You do need knowledge to do it. And if you look at the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, you need people to respect you more than anything. When he was 40 years old, he was in that cave, and Jibril came to him and revealed to him, read, or Iqra, the first words revealed to him. He had great trust and respect amongst his people. Okay, they called him the trustworthy. He was known for always being honest. He was also known for not partaking in certain things. So, of course, shirk, idol worship, praying to stone statues that his tribe would do, of course he would not do that. You know, they would also have parties where they would practice all types of wrong things and drink alcohol. He would not go to those. He didn't do those types of things. And because of that, people might have thought that he was different, but they respected him. So the question that I was asked, how do you separate from friends who are not doing the right thing? It kind of is the beginning of what we're talking about here. Because to begin to position yourself to give dawah to people, for people to accept your advice, it begins with your actions more than anything. And not partaking things is key to that. I'm going to read. I'm not going to read the Arabic because I don't recite the Quran too greatly. But I'm going to read a translation. Okay, this is Surah Al-Furqan, verses 27 to 29. Surah Al-Furqan is the 25th chapter of the Quran, if you don't know that. Does anyone know what Furqan means in English? Yeah. That's exactly it, my good man. And what does criteria mean? Things that you can judge by. Criteria means the difference between right and wrong. And one of the names of the Quran itself is Al-Furqan, the difference between right and wrong. Okay? In this surah, it says, the translation of it is, and on the day meaning what? Meaning the day of judgment. And we talk about it in the masjid. Maybe your families talk about it at home. You know, any type of success in life comes from sacrificing something now for something better later on. Especially sacrificing fun. And there's no greater long-term reward than what will come in the life after this one. And you don't know the future. Nobody knows the future. But one thing that everybody does know is this life will come to an end. I believe the oldest living person on earth right now was born in either 1906 or 1907. So the death rate of people born before 1906, it's 100%. And soon enough, the death rate of people born before 1907 will be 100%. And then 1908, and then 1909. And eventually, the death rate of people born before 2024 will be 100%. It's the one thing everyone on earth knows for sure is going to happen to them. They're going to leave this life. So there's no better long-term decision making than making a decision for the next life. Allah says what the translation of it is on the day the wrongdoer will bite on his hands in regret. He will say, oh, I wish I had taken the path of the messenger, meaning the Prophet ﷺ. And woe to me, I wish I had not taken that one as a friend. And the word in Arabic here is fulan. If you know Arabic, fulan just means like any whatever's sort of guy. I wish I had not taken that one as a friend. He led me astray from the remembrance, in the remembrance of Allah, after it had come to me. And ever is shaitan to man a deserter. So there will be people on the day of judgment, people who will be thrown into the hellfire and punished on the day of judgment. They will have all sorts of regret. They will wish that they could come back to this life and have done more good deeds and not done their sins. They will try to blame other people, but other people will not be responsible for what their deeds are. And there will be people who will be saying they wish they didn't have this person as a friend because that person led them astray. Take that belief into your mind and into your hearts right now. Because some people, it takes that lesson a very long time to settle into them in life. And you're going to need this belief, because I'm going to talk about what it means to separate from friends in school. And it's not an easy thing. It's a difficult thing. And you're in school all the time. And no kid wants to be picked on. No kid wants to be made to feel like they're different. It is difficult. So, really, when it comes to how you separate from bad company, it starts in your mind and in your heart. That is where it starts. And that's really where it happens. You need to have the emotional strength to do it. That's just a big part of it. And every kid nowadays, especially the boys, but every kid nowadays, they're all so worried about whether or not they look tough or whether or not they look weak and all this type of things. And the reality is the kids trying to look the toughest are actually the weakest because they're so concerned about what everybody thinks and what everybody looks like or how everyone looks at them. But the Prophet ﷺ, he said, the strong person is not the one who is best at fighting. He said the strongest person is what? What did the Prophet ﷺ say is the strongest person? What did he say? Yeah, the one who controls himself when he is angry. Very good. Very good. So you have all these young boys, and you got the phones and the beef and the Instagram channels and Snapchat and all that, and they don't want to look weak, so they're fighting in these dumb videos and all that type of stuff. And they're actually proving that they're weak by doing it. Because the Prophet ﷺ, the strong one, is the one who controls himself when he's angry. Okay? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, the example of a good companion and a bad one is like the seller of musk. Musk, of course, is what they have up here and there. It's like perfume or cologne. It smells very, very nice. Very pleasant to be around. And the one who blows the blacksmith's bellows, of course, a blacksmith, if you guys don't know, that name Smith, a smith used to be someone who worked with their hands on something. And a blacksmith was someone who worked with fire, that fire that would burn metal. So when metal burns, it makes black smoke. That's why they're called a blacksmith. So that person working all day doesn't smell very good after it because he's been around all this burning metal. So as for the seller of musk, then either he will grant you some, or you will buy some from him, or at least you will enjoy a pleasant smell from him. As for the one who blows the blacksmith's bellows, then either he will burn your clothes, or you will get a bad smell from him. And the Prophet ﷺ, he also said, a man is upon the religion of his best friend. So let one of you look to whom he befriends. So guys, when we talk about Islam and the verses of the Quran, Bismillah, and the sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the first thing you need to do is carry it with you outside of the masjid. And you need to carry it with you outside of your home. And yes, you'll be around teachers, you'll be around classmates, you'll be around all kinds of people who have no idea about it. And they're talking about this, they're talking about that, they're consuming their minds with everything other than it. And they don't know about it. Inshallah, one day you will teach them about it. just because they don't know about it doesn't mean that it isn't real when you're in school. It's still real, and it's the realest thing there is. So that's the first thing you need to understand. You need to really believe in Islam and believe in these teachings to just have the strength inside yourself to do the right thing when you're around friends in school. And when you have that strong belief, you will start to feel the difficulty that comes with it is actually a good thing, because it is a good thing. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that you won't, well, He asks the believer, do you think you will enter Jannah and you won't be put through difficulty? Or you won't be put through a test? So to get to Jannah, to get to paradise, you're going to be put through difficulty. And the difficulty that you will be put through, it's not like what other people are put through. Think about kids your age in Gaza, or Sudan, or somewhere else. The difficulty you have is like nothing compared to that. We're just talking about like feeling uncomfortable around some friends, which I do know it's difficult. It is difficult, I understand. But really, it's not that much. And when you go through that difficulty, you have to understand that this is Allah testing you. And that test is something to embrace. Even it is something to be proud of, because it shows that Allah is favoring you by putting you through it. Because when you try to separate from people who are doing the wrong thing, they will try to make you feel bad about it. They will pick on you for it. That will happen. And it's very difficult when you have to be in school 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, maybe even more, 30 to 40 hours a week, and it's like constant. So there's a few things you have to understand about this. Number one, when kids pick on you, bullying is something that has been studied really quite closely by psychologists, meaning people who study the mind. Most kids who pick on other kids and do it a lot and who are the leaders of it, they actually tend to be the kids who have some of the biggest problems in their own life. And they tend to be kids who have some of the worst feelings about themselves. So really, you shouldn't get mad at that person. You should actually feel sorry for them. And you should not concern yourself with having to prove anything to them. That's something you really have to understand. Other kids your age, you won't be able to convince them of things when they're on the wrong path. If you behave correctly, you might get into a position one day in life where they come to you for advice. Or they go through an experience where they realize you, or the one who behaved like you, is actually the person that they should have been following the whole time. But that takes time. That takes time. So when you get picked on, because if you want to separate from the cool kids, or the kids who are talking about everything that everyone's talking about, which is pretty much always trash, to separate from that, you are going to face being picked on. It's inevitable. Okay? Now, you don't have to bring that on. Okay? You don't have to make it a confrontation with people. So I'm sure if I asked each one of you individually, each one of you could think of some kids at your school, some kids in classes that you've had, some kids who you've been around who you know it's better to not be around them. And you maybe can't control being around them because you don't choose the classes you're in, or maybe when you eat lunch or whatever. But you at least know that it's better to not be socializing with them and talking with them and letting them lead what you talk about and what you think about. Because the kids who are the most aggressive at doing that at school, they're the kids who feel the worst about themselves inside. So they're just looking for attention from everybody. But what you can do is you can remove your attention from whatever they're talking about. So it begins with what you do with your eyes, or what you don't do with your eyes. And from there, what you do with your mouth, or what you don't do with your mouth. And from there, where you choose to be in a group versus where you choose to not be in a group. So, the kids that you need to separate from, I'm not saying you need to go to them tomorrow or you need to go to them the first week of school and be like, hey, I'm not being your friend anymore, that type of thing. It's actually better not to do that, because you're going to bring about a confrontation that you don't need, and you don't need to do it that way. And I'm not even saying to not be around those kids necessarily, because you can't even always control whether or not you're around those kids. But what you can do is, when they're showing the video, hey, look at this or whatever, don't look at it. Just tell them that you prefer not to. When you get messaged on Snapchat or TikTok or wherever with this, and that, or calling your attention to this, don't respond. And that type of inaction, it speaks for yourself. Now again, you will get to a point eventually where someone might say to you, hey, why didn't you respond to my message? Why don't you do this anymore? Why don't you do that anymore? When someone does that, the most important thing is to follow that hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and just control yourself. Just to control yourself and stay calm. Which is very hard when you're young. And you might not do it well the first time. But those kids, they're going to try to make you feel bad about making the right choice. If you get all caught up in your mind about trying to prove them wrong, or you get all caught up in your mind about trying to make them think a certain way about you, then they're going to get you all worked up. And those kids, all they're looking to do is work kids up. That's all they're looking to do. Because when you work people up, you have their attention, and that's all they're trying to do. And the viral videos, and the kids doing this and that, the music, the lip syncing, the fighting, whatever it is, all that is just about getting kids' attention. And when they get you worked up, what it tells them is, aha, I have control over him now. That's the thing people don't get about bullies. The bully doesn't care if you react to him angrily. He's actually expecting that. He doesn't care if you're mad at him. He actually wants that. So when you respond and you're angry or you're worked up, and also too, if you get upset, the bully just feels this kind of rush, like, yeah, I got a reaction out of him, because that's all he was looking for in the first place. What they can't stand, and what gets them to not do it anymore, and what gets them to think about it a little more, is when you really don't react to them at all. You stay calm with your body. You stay calm with your mind. You stay calm with your face. And you don't feed into reacting to them. And actually, sometimes kids who are really being picked on in school, counselors or psychologists, they will actually work with those kids one-on-one, and they will role play. They'll ask the kid what the bullies say to them, and the psychologist or the counselor, they will role play with that young person. They'll say the same things that the bully says to them, and then the young person just practices like not reacting to it. Because if you just don't say anything, or if you just casually say, I don't want to talk about this, just leave me alone, this type of thing, what you're going to show them is that they can't affect you. And when you show someone that they can't affect you, then they don't have any power over you. And they will feel stupid then. They will feel stupid, and that will make them think about themselves a little bit, inshallah. Inshallah. Okay, bismillah. The other thing, too, you guys have to understand, young people, it's both a benefit, but also something that can be negative. Young people have very, very strong imaginations. Okay, young people have very, very strong imaginations. Little kids, they can make up entire like fantasy worlds. That's why young people like superhero movies and fantasy movies so much, because it's all very, very imaginative. And it's not reality. So, for one thing, an imagination, it's good in a way because you might have the ability to imagine how you can do good things that other people can't. But a way that young people's imaginations really trap them is they really get out of their minds about imagining what other people think about them. And this is something that young people in school really struggle with. Because you're around these kids all the time. Everyone's always talking about this, or that. And if you ever become the center of attention because someone doesn't like the choice that you're making, or the choice that you're making makes them feel insecure about themselves, it's a nerve-wracking thing. Because now everyone's attention is on you. And what kids do is they imagine what other kids are thinking about them. And they get all worried about that. And if so-and-so is thinking this, or if so-and-so is thinking that, what are they going to say to me tomorrow? How am I going to react to that? And it becomes this whole nervous thing that racks kids' minds. And it's difficult. It is difficult. You really have to understand that people are not thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are. Because you're self-centered. Okay, young people are self-centered, especially young people who grow up in this country. So you think a lot about yourself and what you want, whether or not you're entertained, so-and-so and such and such. But other people, they're really not thinking about you all that much. They're thinking about themselves. So you have to understand that, and the type of worry that comes with that, you have to give yourself permission to not feel that worry so much, because it is very difficult. To begin separating from kids who are difficult, begin with your eyes and your mouth. Don't look at what other people are looking at. Don't talk about what other people are talking about, and don't use the same language as them. Okay, maybe you're going to be around the same kids, this and that. But every kid saying this word and that word all the time, be it the N word, the F word, or other words, or whatever they're saying, just try being around them but not using those words. Just try it. See if you can do it. And over time, they might notice. They might confront you about it, but they'll actually respect you more if you don't do that. And try replacing it with cleaner language. Especially if you're in middle school or early high school, this is a huge thing. And the teachers nowadays, they don't do a good enough job of correcting kids in doing this. So all day those words are flying around, and certainly the more you're watching TikTok or Instagram or whatever, everyone's going to be saying those words. All those words are rooted in disrespecting humanity in general. And most of them are rooted in disrespecting women especially. And many of them are rooted in disrespecting black people in particular. So that is a small thing that you can begin with. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said the best deeds are those that are small but done consistently. And restricting yourself from doing something is a deed. So whatever language the other kids are using, don't use it. Use better language. Make a commitment to do that right now. And there's some other particular things. Try to replace it with more Islamic language. And for girls in particular, I will say, I talked a little bit last time about how on social media, it's the boys who kind of have most attention. And there's a thing about media just trying to make women act more masculine, which really is not something in keeping with Islam. And the fact that is in Islam, the difference between males and females are known and distinguished clearly, that's actually something this society needs help from us in showing people. So a lot of the young Muslim girls nowadays, they've adopted the habit of when they're at school, they call one another bro. They don't call each other sister, they call each other bro. Because the boys call one another bro. And the people on social media, they call one another bro. So then the girls just imitating that, they call each other bro. So the girls, I'd say, really, understand it's not an Islamic thing to do. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said that Allah has cursed the men who imitate the women and the women who imitate the men. You call a girl bro, you're imitating men. And it's a way, too, it takes away the affection of sisterhood from you. So the sisterhood that Islam gives you is a special thing. And it's something that we don't want destroyed over time. So that's something in particular. When other girls are calling each other bro at school, don't use that term. And maybe they'd laugh at you if you called each other sister, because I've seen that happen too. But that's something you can try, but if you don't feel comfortable with it, at least refrain from calling other girls bro. Okay? A great scholar, we'll leave with this and then we'll take a larger break. Is the brother, I don't know if there's snacks this time or that type of thing. There's juice and stuff? It's there? Okay, I don't want to deprive you guys of that. All right, listen closely, okay? So there's a great scholar. His name is Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi. He wrote many books. They're beautiful books. And even though he lived 700 years ago, you'd be amazing how relevant his books are today. Yes. Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi. Al-Jawziyah, sorry. Not to be confused with another scholar named Ibn al-Jawzi. Ibn al-Qayyim. Qayyim like Qiyam, Qiyam, the word Qiyam, it's like that. Okay. He said in his book, The Benefits, avoiding bad company and befriending the righteous are among the essential elements of righteousness. Those who wish to be on the path of guidance should distance themselves from the people of heedlessness. And if you're heedless, it means you don't pay attention. And that is a burden of most young people. They just don't pay attention to their actions. And they just go with the flow with everything. Those who wish to be on the path of guidance should distance themselves from the people of heedlessness, sins, and innovation, and should always be in the company of those who remind them of Allah and lead them to goodness and righteousness. So guys, I want you to think of a few things right now before we break. First of all, think of a question you'll ask when we come back from break. Because if you have a question, or can think of a question, everyone else will benefit from you asking it. The second thing is, those of you who are in middle and high school, think about, do you pray every day at school? Or every day you're supposed to? And is it easy for you? And if it's not, then make a commitment right now that, number one, you're going to do that. And number two, if the school doesn't make it easy, we'll work with you to have the school make it easy. And then when you commit to praying every day, even if no one else is, when you start, some other kids will. And that is really what you need to do to start indicating to yourself who are the kids that you need to be around versus the kids to not be around. Because if the prayer is happening at school, who you should be in company with becomes kind of easy then. Because it's going to be the kids who are also praying. And even if those aren't the kids who you're friends with before, or those aren't the kids who are part of your typical friend group, you want to start thinking about making them your friend group. so that you can be around people who will have the courage, who will be strong enough to remind one another of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what Islam teaches while you're in school. So, number one, think of a question to ask when you get back. Number two, just think about that. Are you praying every day at school? Because if you're in middle or high school, especially, actually even kids in late elementary school, but certainly if you're in middle and high school, you should be praying every day, so long as you don't have an excuse not to. And if you're a male, you pretty much never have an excuse not to. You should be praying every day. And it's not something we want you to be deprived of. I say all this and I ask Allah for forgiveness. Bear witness that none is worthy worship of Him. And I seek repentance from Him alone. So why don't we take a little break? If there's juice or whatever, I don't know where the brother is, but he can lead it. And we'll come back, maybe 15 minutes? 15 minutes or so, inshallah.
Flyer. Time now 8:30. I'll be now because in 30 minutes. It's kind of I'll be now because in 30 minutes. Thank you. That was an announcement. 기다릴게요.
I'm not sure if this can be heard outside the musalla, but let's say 8 more minutes we'll come back, okay? 8 more minutes. Can't let the break go too long. Well, okay, it's 7:30. We'll say we'll be back at 7:40. Let's make it 10 minutes, nice and even. 7:40, come back. What's your name? Wasab? Great name. What's your name? Harun, inshallah. I know you told me, I forgot though. Sufyan, that's right. It's a good name. You know who Sufyan al-Thawri is? Good for you. Good for you. Okay, we're going to start again in 5 minutes. If you're running around, please don't go crazy. Don't break anything, please. Okay, just be chill. I'm not sure if I can be heard outside the musalla, but actually it's turned into 4 minutes. We're going to be coming back. You are expected back in the musalla in 4 minutes. We're starting again in 2 minutes. Okay, if you're in the musalla, you really should start settling down. If you're little, like under 8, and you can't settle down, you can go out there maybe. No, I know the carpet's soft in here. If you're not in the musalla, I don't even know if you can hear me or not, but you should start making your way back. 2 minutes, less than that now.
Relax, okay? Relax.
If you're in the musalla, you can start facing me. Face me if you're in the musalla, and start decompressing a little from the break, okay? Breathe a little slower. Get yourself relaxed. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, we got about 30 seconds before we're going to start. I don't know if someone can volunteer to gather people in, because we might have less people coming in late with that. It's fine, one way or the other. But I don't know if they can hear me out there. I don't think they can. I'm not sure. Outside of the musalla or not. 15 seconds we're going to start. I'll talk a little bit. Then those of you who are in here, Shell, it's up to you to ask questions then, okay? And if you have a question, then everyone else will benefit, okay? Starting again in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, something I wanted to mention, guys. Always in these types of talks, and again, okay, Muslims, they're 1 out of 100 people in America is a Muslim, so we're not the majority. So being Muslim will look strange to people, okay? So these types of talks, we always need to remind about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Anyone know the hadith I'm going to say? About strangers.
The Prophet ﷺ, he said that Islam came as something strange. The Prophet ﷺ, he said Islam came as something strange, and it will come back. The Prophet ﷺ, he said Islam came. Prophet ﷺ, he said Islam came as something strange, and it will come back as something strange. So give glad tidings to the strangers. So, in America, Islam is still coming in America. It has not fully came yet, because most people still don't know about it. And it's just the way of things that when everyone is wrapped up in everything other than Islam, that the person who wants to hold to it and who doesn't want to be part of the foolishness that everyone else is, they will look like someone strange to those people, and they'll pick on you. But that hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, if you accept it, you accept it into your mind, you accept it into your heart, then what other people think, it doesn't have to matter. And really, it's foolish for it to matter. I know it's hard for it not to matter. I know that. It is hard. But if you just accept that hadith, then it doesn't have to matter. And you actually should take pride in being seen as strange when you do practice Islam. Okay? We talked about honesty and the importance of honesty, and how honesty is one of the ways that the Prophet ﷺ, he earned people's trust, and that was part of how people were willing to listen to him. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he first became public with his dawah, so he received revelation in the cave first. And then for 3 years, Islam was kept as something private. Okay, Khadija, his wife, may Allah be pleased with her, she accepted Islam. Then Ali, his nephew, and then a few people after that. But they kept it like something secluded until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to bring it public. When it became public, he stood on Mount Safa, which is outside the Kaaba, if you've been to Mecca before, and he called the people to come listen to him. And they came and listened to him. Now, if he had just been someone who people didn't trust, someone who people thought was a fool, someone who people thought was a liar, they wouldn't have come and listened to him. But they came and listened to him. Even the people who came and listened and didn't accept Islam, when he stood on the mountain and called them to him, they still came to him. And he asked them, if I told you there was a cavalry coming behind me to attack you, would you believe me? And they said that they would believe him because they had the type of trust. So, really doing da'wah to people and teaching people about Islam, it takes time. It might not be something you do until you're much older. That's fine. But it's something you can do once you're in a position where if you ask people to come listen to you, they will come. And that is done through your everyday habits and the actions and the character that you exhibit every day. And honesty is a big part of it. Now, especially teenagers, especially those who are teenagers, let's say 12 and older, teenagers lie a lot to their parents. Okay, teenagers lie a lot to their parents. It's almost habitual. So something that I recommend all of you to do is just try being honest with your parents. Teenagers lie to their parents not because they're bad or not because they want to be liars, But teenagers lie to their parents because they don't want their parents to think something bad about them. They want them to have a good impression of them. But that doesn't make lying okay. And actually, your parents are the people with whom you can start practicing honesty with. And honesty is something you need to practice. Because whether or not someone is really honest is when they can be honest about something that is difficult. And especially about being honest with something that goes against them, their own self. And you'll be surprised. Okay, maybe your parents will be angry if you tell them something that is disappointing them, or you are honest about something that your mind tells you not to be. They might be angry at the beginning, but they'll actually respect you more in the long run. They'll actually respect you more in the long run. And something I want to say to the parents, coming to, especially those of you who have come to this with your kids. Okay, this will give you the opportunity to talk to these things about your kids. Talk about these things with your kids. Can you do me a favor? Can you take this chair and move it over here? Just move it over there. Because I need to be able to see all of you when I'm talking. I appreciate that. Thank you. Coming to this will give you the chance to talk about all this with your kids. And you need to talk to them about it with them. Okay? They're listening. They'll take this in, but they'll struggle to remember if we don't remind them of these things. And, some of these kids, they will start trying what I'm talking about. They'll start trying to discipline themselves. They'll start trying to not do what other kids are doing. For the parents, you want to position yourself to be able to know about that when it starts happening, when the school year comes, or even before. And for that, they have to feel okay about telling you that. Most kids, especially the Muslim kids, they don't even tell their parents about what other kids are doing in school, for the most part, because they're too afraid of their parents freaking out about it. So you need to get in a position where your kids can at least be honest about what other kids are doing at school, the things they're saying and the things they're talking about. And then when they're honest about it, you want to not freak out about it, not have like a strong emotional reaction about it. You want to thank them for being honest about it. And you want to tell them that you're proud of them for being honest about it. And then when you get into discussions more about how they are trying to separate themselves from what the other kids are doing, this idea of you being
Proud of them, you want to reiterate to them. Sometimes parents have a tough time with that. Sometimes if you grew up in a culture where that wasn't something you said to kids frequently, people have a hard time with it. But American kids are like, they're soft. Okay, they're soft. They're egocentric. So they need to be validated a little bit. And kids actually are very concerned about whether or not their parents are proud of them. And when, you don't want to tell them that you're proud of them when you're not, or something like that. You don't want to give them a false sense of self-esteem. But when kids do what you want them to do, and you acknowledge that, and you validate it to them, and you tell them you're proud of them, that doesn't stop the kids from, it's not like it's done now, okay? The kids don't take it like, oh, mom and dad are proud of me, so I'm done, I can do whatever I want now. No, it will encourage them to do it more. And, you want to get into these discussions with the kids. And as best you can, I know work schedules don't always permit it, but you should be having dinner together every day. And, you have to check in with kids every day about what is going on in school and what is going on in their life. And you have to make them feel like it's okay for them to tell you about things, which specifically means not getting all worked up when they tell you something, or not getting all nervous about it. You have to be willing to listen. That's the key to maintaining all of this. Because I can talk to them, but they'll only hold on to it so far. They need consistent follow-up and that type of thing. Okay? So anyone have a question? Okay? Go ahead, raise your hand, and benefit everyone else by asking the question. it really takes a brave person to be the first one to ask a question. So can someone raise their hand and ask a question? Don't look for someone else to do it, you do it. Yeah, parents can ask a question too. Well, I mean, do any kids have any things to say about that? So the question is about how you guys... Did you hear the question? So she asked, like, how should you guys deal with gender identity in school? Like, okay, first guys, raise your hand if gender identity is a topic that has been brought up at school. Guess what that is? Okay, well, gender is whether or not someone is male or female. Okay? Identity comes from the word identify, which means to acknowledge what something is, basically, okay? So, I mean, what she's getting at, Ahmed, right? What she's getting at is, you know, the parents have a lot of concern over the kids being taught in school that someone who is a female can say they're a male, and then everyone has to pretend that they're a male. Or someone who's male can say that they're a female, and then everyone has to pretend they're a female. Or someone who is a female can say, I want people to refer to me as he or him, and then everyone's supposed to go along with that. Or someone who's male can say, I want people to refer to me as she or her, and everyone's supposed to go along with that, which they call, you know, and sometimes in school they might ask you what your pronouns are. Have you guys dealt with that or not? Raise your hand if you've dealt with that in school. Okay. So most of you, but not all of you. Look, I mean, like, this question, first of all, you know, it's an issue that we have to be concerned about, and the parents who organized this, they were primarily concerned about this. But look, I've spent 15 years in schools, and I'm concerned about this issue. I am. It's not the biggest thing going on with the kids, though. The biggest thing going on with the kids, especially the Muslim kids here in the Twin Cities, is all of the riffraff on social media. And you know, also, too, just us having no control, no one having any control over our kids when they act in a group. This is the biggest issue that we have as a Muslim community when it comes to youth. Okay, we have a lot of kids in our community. Muslims in general have a lot of kids. We have way more kids than adults in our community. And then the adults who are involved with kids in our community are even fewer. So, you know, we're putting the kids in charge of, you know, the non-Muslims at the school, you know, maybe the few people working in the Dukesy on the weekend or wherever. But most of all, our kids are living in these bubbles that they've created for themselves, where life is just all about their little social criteria that they set up, which just has to do with talking about whatever is being talked about on social media or movies or whatever. Just, it's the entertainment industry just rules teenage culture. So our kids, they are caught up in just being groups where you get together and you just imitate what you see on media, and whoever does it is cool and whoever doesn't do it is not cool. And the kids who know that's bad, they're constantly worried about being cool in those situations because they don't want to get picked on. And the kids who don't have that sense, they're leading the charge because they're getting their emotional validation from all the other kids. Okay? This is really the bigger issue that's going on in our community. So, I mean, for the kids to deal with gender identity, number one, as a parent, you have a right to not have your kid exposed to any educational material that you don't want them exposed to. And parents in Osseo, who mostly organize this, have dealt with that. It's an explicit right in Minnesota state law that anything in a child's learning curriculum that the parent objects to, the school has to give that kid alternative instruction. So at Osseo High School last year, when they were doing their big LGBT lesson or whatever in April, all the Muslim families at Osseo Senior High School, most of them at least, asked for their kids to not be a part of that. So they put those kids in a separate room, and they did something else during that. So you can have that type of thing done. Now, when you have that type of thing done, and I say that you should, but just understand, like, it doesn't end there for the kids. Because now you've set up a whole thing socially for the kids and how they relate to the other kids. Because all the other kids want to know, like, well, why couldn't you be in there? What, you're too, you just listen to your mom and dad. Like in an American high schooler or middle school who listens to their mom and dad and respects their mom and dad does not look cool at school. So it creates a whole, I don't say to not have the kids separated when those class lessons have, but it creates a whole other thing with the kids. And sometimes there's a backlash with the kids. So, look, and I was going to get, this isn't the last session, but, these things going on with peers and developing the internal discipline to separate from them and the peers in our own community who are misbehaving, that's the first thing the kids need. If they develop that, they can develop the same thing with the non-Muslims, the non-Muslim kids. And the same principle applies to stuff in the education system. So, when those types of lessons come up, number one, as a parent, you have every right to know ahead of time. So you need to ask the school explicitly and let them just know plain and simple, and I can help you cite the statute, all that type of stuff. Let them know you don't want them in it ahead of time. When the day comes where they're going to learn about that stuff, it is better to not have the kids in school than have the school put them in a separate room for the lesson. Because when they've been put in a separate room, they're socially ostracized now, and they stick out. And it's like the last thing that a teenager wants, last position a teenager wants to be put in. And a lot of kids, they won't want that so much that they'll start pushing back against you about the whole thing. So you have to plan ahead of time and not have them there that day. That's the better way to do it, And again, we need to continue to educate the schools about it. Okay, this is too big a thing to have the kids do right now. Okay, the kids need to cultivate their faith in a strong enough way that they can feel a sense of empowerment to not do things. That's what the kids need now. If they do that, their character will stay in place, people will respect them, they'll develop good skills, study habits, all that type of stuff, and as they get older, they'll be in a position to educate other people and give them dawah. And that's how you'll reform these issues. So, that's the first thing. Parents you have every right to find out when those types of lessons are going to happen from the school, and find out when they're going to happen, make it known to the head of the school that you do not want your kid exposed to any of that learning. You have that right under the education codes of the state of Minnesota. And, then the best thing to do is when that learning is going to happen, don't have the kid in school that day, okay? Now, as far as with other kids who identify that way, and this is what the people who advocate for that type of stuff will do. They'll try to emotionally leverage the kids who identify that way against us. And they'll try to say, well, you are making them feel bad, all this type of stuff. And number one, if our removing our kids from the situation makes them feel bad, that's on them. For the other kids, like in my experience, kids who are identifying as transgender or this type of thing, actually, a lot of times they're smart kids. But they are young, and they emotionally have a lot of unmet needs, and they usually come from a household where in one form or another they don't have both parents present. Okay? So they're going through like some big things emotionally, those kids. A lot of them throw it away as they get older. So, for you guys, when it comes to giving dawah to anyone, these little issues come up, but the little issues aren't where you want to start. So even that person who's 13 colors his or her hair pink and says they use the pronouns of the opposite gender or whatever, you do still want that person to become a Muslim one day. And you at least want them to know about Islam. So they're like really emotionally attached to this whole idea, and it's getting them attention, and for whatever reason they need that at this point in their life. But it really doesn't make sense to like get in an argument with them about it. If they are confrontational with you about it, which I know some of those kids can be. Okay? If those, this goes for any issue actually. Okay, whether it's about LGBT stuff, whether it's about anti-Semitism or whatever. If kids try to bully you for having a view that Islam gives you, tell your parents about it, and then the parents, you need to write down about it and send an email to the school and maybe follow up with them by phone. Because there needs to be documentation about it. Now, I do know both from kids and from parents and from people in the schools that there is an increase of bullying going on against Muslim kids by kids who identify as LGBT or people who are really on that whole bandwagon. I know that not just from our community, but I know that from some school leaders who I've talked to as well. So we need to document that stuff when it happens, because they don't have a right to do that to our kids, and you need to notify the school, okay, if that happens. If those kids try to corner you or pick on you for that or whatever, again, stay calm. Okay, that is honestly the biggest advice you can get when someone puts you in a tense situation. And this is the thing, like, no one likes being in tense situations. We live in a diverse society, and diversity creates a lot of tension between people. So, we can't ask our kids to be like fixing these tense situations. If someone confronts you about that, says, well, why do you think this, or do you hate me, or that type of thing, just say, look, I have religious views, and say to them, if you would like to learn more about my religion, I'd be happy to talk to you about that sometime. Or if you would like to learn more about my religion, I'd be happy to give you something to read about that sometime. Or if you would like to learn about my religion, I'd be happy to take you somewhere sometime where you can do about it. Okay? But don't get into the arguments about the issue itself. Because, when you educate someone about Islam, there's an order upon which you want to do it. So you don't want to start with someone talking to them about your religious beliefs, talking about gender identity, or talking about jihad, or talking about the role of women, or anything that people might see as controversial. You don't want to start there. You want to start with what the religion begins with, which is Tawheed and the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Most non-Muslims in society now, most of them are not religious, but most of them still believe in God. They'll tell you they believe in God, but they just don't believe in organized religion, as they will call it. And most of them, their idea of God that they've developed for themselves is what is natural for someone to believe, which is that he's an all-knowing, all-powerful creator. But they just don't know there's a religion where that is God. I didn't know that before I discovered Islam. So a lot of times non-Muslims, they grow up with the impression that every religion has some sort of goofy idea about what God is. And they don't know there's a religion right in front of them where the natural idea of what God is available. So whoever you have some sort of conflict with or whatever, or some sort of divergence, you want to bring them to that. So you don't want to get bogged down in the issue itself. You want to stay calm with the person and just tell them, I will take you to this place where you can learn about my religion or XYZ. That's how I'd answer that. Okay? Any other questions? Yes? Well, anti-Semitism, first of all, the word Semitism comes from the word Semite or Semitic. And it's normally used to refer to languages, okay? A history of languages that you call Semitic languages. There's two main Semitic languages in the world today, Hebrew and Arabic, okay? Now, Jewish people, their language is Hebrew. Like for Muslims, our language is Arabic of our religion. So anti-Jewish attitudes and discrimination against Jewish people a long time ago, when it was going on in this country in Europe, it came to be called anti-Semitism because Jewish people spoke a Semitic language. Okay, so Muslims, even though certainly if you're Arab, even though many Muslim people are Semitic themselves, Muslims are accused of being anti-Semitic because we oppose Israel and what they do to the Palestinians, and because our religion has legitimate criticisms of Judaism, like it has legitimate criticisms of all religions. That's what anti-Semitism is. Any other questions, guys? Yes. Did you guys hear the question? I'm talking to you. Did you hear the question? It's okay if you didn't. Okay. She asked, do I think the problems that have developed in our community with young people as a result of not having, I guess, more gatherings like this or programs for the youth? You know, it's been a lot of things, okay? It's a challenge, okay? Our community has a lot of challenges from the time it began. So more programs like this are very important, but you need people to lead them and people who can do it well, and we haven't had that, okay? I think that, you know, this isn't just for Muslim cultures, but I think America is the most individualistic society that exists. So people who grow up here are very egocentric. Okay, meaning they just think about themselves a lot. And the kids are that way. That is very difficult for most immigrant parents to deal with because they did not grow up in cultures like that. So in most cultures where immigrants came from, the parenting of kids is done more collectively. It's done more as a group. You can depend on everyone else in the society to reinforce the same thing upon kids. Here you can't depend on that and you can't do that. So you have to do this more like kind of individual coaching with the kids through their life and through their emotional experience when they grow up here, which is just very hard for immigrants to do, you know. So I don't blame the parents for not being able to do that because they had a million challenges on top of that growing up. But that causes the children of immigrants to be taken advantage of, is what happens. So our kids in our community have just been taken advantage of. And this society, it already owes a lot to us, okay? In all of these school districts, if you look at their enrollment and their demographic change over the past 20 years, you'll find their enrollment numbers are mostly the same, their overall enrollments. But the amount of black kids that they have and the amount of Asian kids that they have has all increased greatly. That's from our community. So had the Muslims not come here, these school districts all would have had major budget cuts. You would have had schools closed. That would affect the whole economy of the city. And it's not just in education where that's an issue. So we have to understand these people who are around our kids all the time, they owe their jobs to us. So we have a right to assert upon them, what we want for the kids, just the thing with the kids too, as I was saying before, immigrant parents, they tend to be like focused on the economics and getting by, you might have to support people back home or whatever. So there's this thing called immigrant acquiescence. Okay, you don't want to ruffle feathers anywhere, that type of thing. It's understandable. But for the kids, what they see is Islam becomes something that you just keep in a box somewhere. And you don't really externalize it anywhere. Because they didn't see people do that. And, so they need to see more people do that is what it comes down to. And, we need to put more... we have a whole generation now of like young adults who grew up here who they don't do that well either. But inshallah, these kids will do better because we're starting right here, inshallah. Okay? Wayakum. If you get angry, you're weak. or if you act on your anger. You understand? If someone says, yeah, go fight them, or someone says, hey, look at this, or do that, or whatever, and if you just give in to what someone else tells you to do, especially if it involves disobeying Allah and His Messenger, you're weak. You understand? And if anyone else says that someone's weak for something other than that, they're a fool. You understand that? You understand that? Any other questions? Any questions? Yes. Yeah. Right. Right. Okay. Can you guys stop talking, please? Because I need you to listen to this. Okay. First of all, the young people, listen to me. I need this guy to turn. Sorry, if I should turn, please. Thank you. Okay, I need you to listen. All right, and I need the parents to listen too. Are any of you guys here, but your parents are not? Okay, please tell them to come next time. Okay, those of you who, and you need to tell them that I told the parents to ask this. Okay, so you got to tell your parents they pick you up to ask you this. All the parents need to ask their kids whether or not they're praying at school, and whether or not it's easy to pray at their school. In most of them, it is not. You're supposed to pray 5 times a day by the time you reach puberty in the religion. And actually, they're supposed to start earlier than that. So we have to deem it as not acceptable if the kids are not praying. And we need to know about that. And kids, you need to be honest about it. Okay? If you have not managed to pray, if you're in middle or high school, 6th grade or up, and you have not prayed in school, no one's going to blame you. It's not your fault, because you need more help in doing it. And we all need to work together to make sure you can. So when your parents ask you whether or not you're praying, you need to give an honest answer. And if they say yes, it's very likely they're being dishonest, to be honest. In most schools, it's not happening. Why is it not happening? It's because the schools don't know how to accommodate it. The kids cannot teach the schools how to accommodate it. They don't have that ability. Okay, if I ask them to teach what we talked about here today for over an hour, they wouldn't even be able to give us 1% of it. They can't teach the school. They don't know what it means to be a teacher, how to run a school, anything. They can't teach the schools how to accommodate it. The advocacy for the kids to pray in school cannot be done by the kids, and it won't be done by the kids. And it's too much of a burden to put onto them. So the parents need to find out for real whether or not the kids are praying at school. You actually don't even need to find out. You need to contact the school, let them know that this is something important for you, that the kids are praying every day, and you want to help the school figure out the best way to do that. And then the people in the school, they need to know all the rules of praying. They need to know how wudu works. They need to know what type of room is appropriate to pray in, not appropriate to pray in. They need advice on how to supervise it. They need to have all their little questions answered, because they'll get all nervous about the idea of supervising it. And the kids need to be supervised. I don't know anywhere in the Muslim world where you ask 11, 12, 13-year-olds to go pray in a room somewhere, and there's no adult there to lead them and supervise them and guide them. They will not do it. Because what the school will do, they'll say, okay, well, how long does it take to pray? Oh, 10 minutes? Okay, they can take 10 minutes here, go to the library and do it. And then we'll go do it. And then the kids won't do it. They'll goof around because they can't control their impulses, and they haven't been set up to do it. And then it's a failure on everybody's part. So the parents have to work with the school to make sure that it's happening. I have a book, and I have a training program. Chapter 4 of this book is called The Technicalities of Following Islam and Cultural Collision in the Public Schools. It goes over all the details, everything a school needs to know and consider.
about what it takes to accommodate the prayer, which is a lot. And there's no one way for a school to accommodate it because they have to know the rules and then game plan around their context. And they need a mindset shift to understand, like, especially in YZ, okay, we have lots of kids. So we're talking, we want maybe hundreds of kids to pray every day in YZ school. They have a right to do that. They have a constitutional right to do that. So supervising all that is a whole operation that we need to help them do and teach them how to do it. And it will take time. But I mean, this is the project for the parents to take on in partnership with the kids. And the parents need to have an attitude, I'm going to go in and help you do it. Because the kids cannot do it by themselves. They don't have that ability. That's the reality of it. If nothing comes from these sessions, this should be the biggest thing that comes to it. And whether it's ASIO or YZETA, you know, like if we had gone to the schools 10, 15 years ago and really had this talk with them, we could have stopped the LGBT stuff from happening and the kids getting exposed to it ahead of time. You know what I'm saying? It's a better conversation to be having with the schools than one that's reacting to a conflict. And again, I'm not saying to have that, not have that conversation and to not keep advocating all that type of stuff. I'm not saying that. But, you know, we need to, and this too, this is an avenue, like, you know, when we react to the LGBT stuff, you know, the non-Muslims, they're conditioned to see that a certain way. Okay, you must be an irrational religious hater. Okay, and they have these things from dealing with conservative Christians, many of whom are kind of crazy, of how you react to them. And then they try reacting to us the same way, and it's like this awkward thing, because we're not white supremacists, you know? So, you know, this conversation becomes a way for the schools to start to see how much we've been sacrificing. Because most, you know, like when I train teachers and school principals, I show them the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says that the salah is the first thing a Muslim will be asked about on the Day of Judgment. And if it's sound, he's successful. And if it's not sound, he's lost and he's failed. And I explain exactly what that means. So then they appreciate the mental and psychological weight that this has on us, which is big. And the reality is, most Muslim parents, they've been sacrificing their kids' prayer at school. It's not been happening. And in a way, it conditions the kids when they get out of school to not pray regularly. And many young adults, that's what they're doing now. So this is a way that we can make the schools start to see how much we've sacrificed, okay? Because when it comes to the LGBT stuff, they'll always say, oh, well, they've been bullied, and, you know, and they have mental health problems, you know, they'll get into all that kind of, and look, educators are very empathetic people. They're very empathetic people. So, you know, we need to get them to appreciate that in our right a little bit. So, you know, there's no tips to give to the kids, okay? The parents need to take charge of this. They need to get real about the fact that it's not happening for most kids. They need to plan together who's taking time off on this day and that day and this day to help the school supervise the kids and help make it happen and all that type of stuff. And it will be messy to begin with. And I'll help. Okay, I will come talk to school, all that type of stuff. I'll even convince them that it's something they need to pay me for. Okay? I'll help, all that type of thing. But, you know, it's just, and look, if you get the school going well, okay, when a school needs to do a new routine, or whatever the routines are of a school day, if you really get it done well for 3 weeks, it can ride pretty smooth for the rest of the year. So this is something the parents in YZ and ASIO should plan around. Okay, the first 3 weeks of school next year, how are we really going to help the middle and high schools accommodate the prayer and make sure the kids are doing it? And we have to have open, hard conversation with them about it. Yes. 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 Mm-hmm. Right. Well, look. divide and conquer. Yes, I understand. I know. Right. Yep. Sure. So look. First of all, the kids are going to have to deal with with their Muslim peers who are less practicing, or their parents are less involved, or whatever, and they need this emotional strength that I'm talking about to do it. Okay. So like that needs to be reiterated to them, and they need to feel like the discipline it takes to do that, and the emotional strength that it takes to resist the peckering from other kids. They need to feel like that's something empowering, and the religion can help them do that. You can help them do that, and this idea of long-term thinking, that you're doing a dawah, which is part of your life mission. The kids need that, because otherwise they just experience the religion as rules and restrictions that they have to follow and not do, and it annoys them. If the religion is not connected to it being a mission, it has to be, because they need something empowering to feel from it. Otherwise, they'll follow every bell and whistle that is put in front of them. Other Muslim kids not praying in the school does not take away your right, for the right of your kids to pray in school. Plain and simple. So it's not right for any administrator to say, I don't have to accommodate that for your kid because these kids don't want to. It's actually unconstitutional for them to do that. And we don't want to get into the legal conversations with them. It's better not to. But if it comes to that, we will. And I have people in the country and in the state, lawyers, who they will write the letter that needs to be written if it comes to that. So if it comes to that, we'll deal with it that way. But the thing about the kids not praying, and look, most Muslims in this society, usually people pray when it's expected in the context you're in to pray, and it's made easy. And they don't, the more difficult it is. So there's a lot of kids in the school who they would pray if the accommodations were better and if it were made easier. Do you understand? And the accommodations come down to a lot of different things. Time, the place, and the supervision is big. Sometimes those kids don't want to pray because the kids who are going to pray are goofing off when they're doing it. And then they pray really quickly. That happens sometimes too. Okay? So, the parents just have to get involved and really work with the school. And, we can make them understand what I just said about how, even the kids who don't want to pray, it's because they don't want the emotional baggage and anxiety that comes all with this. It's not really because they reject praying. It's because being a Muslim, most people are not emotionally and psychologically built to go against the grain of society all the time. But that's what you have to do to really practice Islam in this society. So the people who really stay religious in this society, personality-wise, not all of them, but a lot of them, they tend to be of one of two types. They tend to be really stubborn people who don't mind people being mad at them, this type of stuff. Or they tend to be really introverted people who don't mind being insular and isolated. Because that's what you have to do. You have to isolate yourself from everything. So we have to push for these public institutions especially to start making things easier for us. They owe it to us. They wouldn't have their jobs if we took all our kids out of school tomorrow. And we can threaten to do that as well. And again, you don't want to get into that kind of power playing game, but it's there, Okay? Okay, alhamdulillah. I know Maghrib. Yes, my good man. Hey guys, listen. One of your peers has actually, I'm sorry, I'm not mad at you guys, okay? You're doing a good job sitting and listening. And most young people, they don't have to sit and listen on a summer Saturday this long. You guys are doing a great job. I really appreciate it. I do want you guys to know that what you have, all these friends you have, it's something very, very special. Most people, they don't just have groups of friends they can get together with so easily that the masjid gives you. If you don't hold on to the religion, your kids won't have it. This masjid's very nice. If you guys don't hold on to the religion, it won't be here in 30 years when you're having kids. You understand? And then your kids will grow up with these issues of being lonely that so many kids in America have that you don't have to. My guy asked, hey, listen to the question though. Thank you. What if the teacher doesn't let you leave? So look, what's your name? Sorry, I'm not hearing well today because I'm a little congested. Look, don't get into an argument with your teacher, okay? That's something you need to report to mom and dad, all right? Like, there's times where the teacher, depending on what the school has planned in place, they may or may not be able to do that, okay? Because if the school should, any school with more than 5 Muslim kids, even more than 2 Muslim kids, ought to have a specific time, specific place where the kids are going to pray, and it's built into the schedule and everyone knows about it. So then if they have that and you ask to pray outside of that time, the teacher has a right to say no, okay? If you have to have a test or something, you know, depending on when the prayer time is and stuff, there's flexibility with that. So don't get into an argument with a teacher about it, okay? Report it to mom or dad and try to have them communicate with the school to see what was really taking place, all right? But stay respectful to your teachers, okay? Even when you disagree with them, and it's perfectly fine to disagree with your teachers. That's actually expected in American schools. Even when you disagree with them, or they're stressed out all the time and they're kind of mean, okay? Still be nice to them, okay? Any other questions? Yes, my good man. And we had the microphone last time. You can come up here. It's okay. Because I'm having a hard time hearing today. I'm a little congested in my ears. Yeah, come over here. Like, do you mean a friend or a teacher? A friend. How old are you? How old are you? Huh? You're 7? You're 7 years old? Okay. The question was, what if you have a friend who's acting mean but he's acting nice at the same time? You know, that's a really good question because most 7-year-olds are probably going to act that way because they don't have a lot of impulse control. So, you know, tell her to try to not get upset when they get mean. That's the best thing you can do for that person, okay? And then she can try to advise that friend at a time when they're not being mean, all right? Okay, thank everyone for coming. Ask Allah to make this a benefit for us. Ask Allah for forgiveness. I know I didn't take it all the way to Maghrib. I don't know what they're going to do for 30 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. I don't, but it's available on Amazon if you search it. Yeah, on Amazon. Sounds like
Inshallah, in the future sessions, we'll talk about how would you compare and recommend Islamic schools. My kids, they go to Islamic school. I know it's not for everyone.
Like Islamic schools compared to the public schools? Well, they're better overall. What school do your kids go to? My kids go to I train their teachers. Yeah, and I think a Sufa will expand. So I mean, we need to expand the ability for us to have schools in the Muslim community. They have more money though,